Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this for a while. I have some friends in other cities that work for Deloitte, and so I've known a bit about the company, and it's just exciting to be here. I wasn't sure the exact audience and how we would structure this, but I like that we're just doing this intimate, and I think the whole thing was about coffee and that I feel that intimacy side of it. I think a lot of us are drinking tea or coffee or whatever, so it's all good. I appreciate that they brought iced tea, which is what I love as well. What I thought I would do is just give a little bit of a background of a bit about how I kind of came up with this idea for Charity Charge. I'll stand a little bit on my soapbox of just my why and my vision for this and what I'm really trying to do with the company. And then happy to answer any questions. And obviously, since we have a small group, we can kind of meander and hopefully make this useful and all. I think that, it's a Friday, so this is a good opportunity for probably a lot of you to also just have a little bit of a break from everything that's going on in the week and heading into the weekend and all of that. But I do hope that, I was trying to really think of what's going to be the action or what might come of me being here and us being together. And I hope that, part of it is inspiration is great, but I hope that it also will motivate you to think a little bit more about how you can build purpose or just ways you're giving back, ways you're just being a part of the community a little bit into your everyday lives, because that's really the whole meaning of what I'm trying to do. And just jumping into it matter of factly, so I created this company called Charity Charge, partnered with MasterCard and also Commerce Bank in order to launch this product. And I'm going to get into a second of what it is, but that's just in brief kind of about me. But years ago, I had signed up for a credit card, and I remember at the time that I signed up for it, there were all these marketing advertisements, and I look back on now as kind of illusions of grandeur about how this credit card was going to change my life and about how I was going to earn all these bonus points and rewards and everything. I mean, we all see it, Samuel L. Jackson hawking credit cards, or Tina Fey, or you're just bombarded by point structures, whether you're at Nordstrom's or the Gap or whatever store, get our card, or you're checking out on Amazon and they're saying get our card. So at any rate, I fell into that trap we all have and we all do. And I was using that card and I was accumulating all these points, and it was the end of the year, and I thought, great, let me log in. What am I gonna get with these points? And the first thing I went to do was see what flights I could get. And then there were all these blackout dates. So I went, I can't use my points for that. Then I'm scrolling through their rewards catalog, and it's offering me things like Olive Garden gift cards, or toggling through, and I'm seeing I can redeem my points for Samsonite briefcases or binoculars or just all these things. And for a while I was still clicking through the rewards catalog and what do I want? And I eventually just got so frustrated after about 45 minutes that I logged off, and I really felt kind of disenfranchised and I've been duped. Here I got convinced to sign up for this card, and I don't even want this crap that I've seemingly should really want. And the next thing that I did is I checked my email, and this is just kind of the epiphany for the idea. There's a local group in town called Hill Country Conservancy, and I had been supporting them. They do a lot of preservation work to the beautification for the Austin area, and the email was essentially an end-of-year fundraising drive, and I'd been a part of with their emerging professionals program, so I'd contributed out of my own pocket throughout that year. And it just basically hit me. I thought, here's something that's near and dear to my heart. And while, and now I joke, while Capital One asks what's in your wallet, this company is really about asking people what's in their heart. And so this organization that I was already supporting out of pocket was asking me to help them, and I didn't want anything with my reward points. And so that's when it hit me, and I thought, well, why not just have a credit card that would allow me to make a difference, everywhere, which is by buying my morning coffee, or filling out my gas tank in my car, or the dinners out with friends, whatever it was, or my reoccurring electricity bill. Use my card for that. And so when I just looked at it a bit deeper, what I found are some pretty startling facts that I'll share with all of you. 31% of all credit card holders in the United States never ever redeem their reward points. So that's totals over $16 billion a year in points that ultimately go expired and flow back through what the banks call breakage, which means it goes back to pad their bottom line. So another kind of in these taglines and all, with Charity Charge, it's really about a mission of more profits for nonprofits. And while people don't have to use this for all of their purchases, they can just use it also for a subset of their purchases. And it's just an easy way for them to be able to make a difference and give back. Or for, if you have an airline card, you might get 2x or 3x points when you use it to book that Southwest flight. But if you're just getting one-time points for kind of your average purchases, like your everyday purchases where you don't get bonus kickers, it's just an easy way to kind of add it to your wallet and just have another card in the mix. That's just your easy way to feel good about yourself and also do good. I think that, my kind of biggest message, jumping back to the beginning of my intent for being here and what I was hoping to share, and part of why I wanted to record this to also speak to the larger audience, is that we launched the company about 18 months ago, and what I realize now that I only realized subconsciously, but I now fully see and I want to share with you, is that when I originally had the epiphany for the idea, it was this frustration of feeling like I had been duped by some too big to fail bank, and then realizing that there was an organization that I cared about that needed my help and that I wanted to support. And so it was the bridge of those two. But truly, at our core, and what's really driving me is this notion that why I'm here and what we're trying to do with Charity Charge is just remind people that giving is better than receiving. It's something that my parents really, and my dad especially, who really inspired me to create this company. He unfortunately about 10 years ago passed away from cancer. And he was one of the most giving people that obviously I'm close to him. He's my own father, excuse me. So, I hold him in super high regard and was surrounded with him. But anytime an organization asked him for money, he gave. Anytime we'd walk by a homeless person and needed help, he gave. And I was brought up around that, where there's simple little lessons that our parents or our early childhood teachers might instill in us of, when you cross the street, you look both ways. That adage that I just shared before, that giving is better than receiving. But yet we then start coming up in the world where we have all these huge corporations, and I'm standing on a tall soapbox here now, so I understand that there's different levels of it, right? But we are all consumers. We all do need to buy things. And what I object to is this 100% notion of that we always have to get more. And so what I want to put out, kind of my rallying call and my soapbox, is that just take a second to try to be a bit more mindful of who you are as a consumer and who you are as a person and what are your values. Because the whole scheme for me, and my objection to the structure of the current paradigm of the traditional credit card reward ecosystem, is to keep everyone, they want to keep everyone on a treadmill so that, you're buying your clothes at Gap, and then you're using the Gap credit card so you can get more points so that you can then buy more stuff there. You can have this airline miles card so you can buy a flight so you can redeem more flights and get more points and buy more flights. And it's this never-ending treadmill. And I'm not saying that points are bad, and I'm not saying that some of those cards aren't for you, and that's fine. I'm just saying take a second to think about the world that you live in, and think about a bit of how you could potentially be a little bit more mindful of incorporating acts of giving back and doing good. And that's what this is trying to fit into, that kind of scheme of saying, here's just an easy way to give back at no cost to you. My hope is that people, and over time, as I'm able to share a little bit more about this message, will realize that that being on a consumerism treadmill of the current state of how the system is very much can very much lead to unhappiness. Because if you're always in a state of never having enough, I always have to have more points, I always have to have more miles, I think that it can become very unfulfilling if you kind of can get outside of that for just a second. And that's, obviously I'm 100% all in, as the founder, and then there's different, I was just listening to this great talk with John Mackey, the founder of Whole Foods, and he was talking about, when you have a movement, the different sides of it. I mean, I want to meet everyone in the middle of what's reality. But I do hope that there's no other credit card company that's going to probably have an honest conversation about take a second to think about if you need all those points. And one big picture thing that I'd kind of leave you with, and happy to kind of Q&A or talk about anything that I'm reminded of, and I think a lot about, especially like losing my father early in life. There's always this general speaking quote of, you can't take it to the grave. You're not going to take the money you accumulate. You're not going to take your possessions. You're not going to take your points. So there are organizations out there, and in our system, with this card, you can contribute to any nonprofit across the country. We have a partnership with GuideStar, which is the #1 nonprofit information source in the world. So cardholders already are, we have cardholders in every state across the country. They're supporting whatever's near and dear to their heart, whether it's their local animal shelter or it's a national organization like American Cancer Society. You can change who you support if you want. You can support up to 3 different causes at a time. But it's just an easy way to earn cash back every time you make a purchase and then donate it to the causes you want. It's tax deductible. There's no annual fee for you as a cardholder. And then we get paid separately by MasterCard to grow and operate the program, and we underwrite the donation processing fees. So no cost to the nonprofit either. That's really the gist about what this is all about. I mean, there's the practical of like what it is, but I wanted to share with you the why, so you can just think about whether it's your financial decisions or maybe it's the next time you're like walking by a homeless person, you can maybe think about how you can help them out, or other ways you can get involved just in the community and take a second to step outside yourself. I just know, and I've tried to be more and more mindful of this. I'll share you like one anecdote, but it's happening more and more as I'm more mindful of this. I was going, Cooper's Barbecue is over here on Congress and Second, just down the street. And I was walking in, this is just a few weeks ago, and this homeless guy asked me, he's like, can you help me? Do you have any money? Do you have any food? And I was kind of in a rush, so went in line, and I realized I need to let me buy him something. So I packaged up like this whole meal. I got him like a huge platter of chicken, and then they have like all those loaves of bread, and I got bread, then they have the sides like pickles and onions, and then I went to the bar counter, and I didn't want to buy a beer for him. I didn't know. I got like a huge cup of water to go and everything, and just gave it to him and left. And that maybe it was $10. That was the best $10 I've spent all month. And it was on him. I got in my car and I drove home, and I had to pull into a parking lot because I started crying. Because here was this guy that just needed help, and it took me a little bit of mindfulness, and I'm not saying this to brag, I'm saying it to hopefully inspire you to go donate $10, do some sort of act, because always what you get out of it is way more than what you give. And it's all gonna come back to you. So I'll end with that. Happy to answer any questions or whatever. I'm not sure if this is the direction you wanted it to go in, but that's that.
And I also told the people on the phone, so Bella and Rebecca, if you guys have any questions, just put them in the IM, and I'll ask Steven. So you said like 31% of people don't use their credit card points. How do you make sure that they're using these? Do they automatically get sent?
Sure. So two kind of a macro and a micro answer to your question. So number one, the current paradigm of how credit cards function is, generally speaking, obviously it's a big industry, so there's some exceptions to the rule, but you have to actually redeem your points or redeem your airline miles. With our card, and that's where the breakage can come from. With our card, cardholders, you select when you apply, you pick the nonprofits you want to support, and then automatically you're accruing cash back that flows directly to them. So there's no gotchas with ours where you have to remember that, on the last day of the month to log in and hit the redeem button, or we take them back. I mean, that's what would happen if this was done by a bank, traditionally, it wasn't, I think honestly a social entrepreneur and, a public benefit and a mission first focus. So no breakage with our system. I think the other, to answer your question is, one huge way that we grow is through partnerships with nonprofits. So we naturally want to work and spread awareness to the nonprofit community. It's a great way for them to earn free reoccurring revenue and also just build more engagement and loyalty with their supporters, because every time they're using the card, they're having a positive thought, about that organization. They know what they're doing with their impact.
How are the
Dang.
charities paid again, and how do we know that our money is actually going to them?
Sure. So as a cardholder, you get access to what we call a donation dashboard, and that's where you can log in at any point in time and track and see who you are giving to, and also have the ability to change or add different nonprofits to support. We work with 2 organizations, one I mentioned and the second one, because I love your question, that are the most reputable and just, quite frankly, just the best in the industry. So one is GuideStar, which is a nonprofit and the #1 trusted and just the largest database of nonprofit information. So we pull all of their nonprofits into our system, and they've already vetted these are nonprofits in good standing with the IRS. And then we utilize an organization called Network for Good that is one of the largest donation processors in the United States. And so they're essentially the checks and balances or accountability. They ultimately are the ones that push out the money. My company is essentially the tool, kind of connected together, but from a back end, moving of dollars. Our bank partner and MasterCard have the pool of funds, and then they wire it to Network for Good as one lump sum, and then Network for Good disperses it out. So my company's never touching the cardholder money. It's a good question, and I want to be authentic. So does that answer it, or does it lead you to more questions?
Oh no, I'm just
okay.
Yeah. I guess I was just wondering what the process of them being paid was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or how do you know how much is actually going to that charity?
So, yep. So as a cardholder, you can see individually what you've earned, and then as the company, we can see in aggregate. Say you guys each had cards and you're supporting the same organization. Simple math. Austin Pets Alive, and you had earned $15 and you had earned $10. In aggregate, Austin Pets Alive will get $25, obviously feeding up the breakdown of the amount that you each earned.
Do you know what percentage of your cardholders only use this card or use it once or twice a month or that kind of thing? Do you keep track of that data?
I don't know the exact answer to your question. That would be really opt in.
Yeah.
But what I do know is that so far, which is really awesome for especially nonprofits to get the word out about this, our active users of the card are generating over $270 a year back to their nonprofit. So it's pretty significant, the scale that it can do. Obviously, we're in our early stages, of building this movement and awareness and all of those things. But I ran a report the other day because we're one of the businesses that we work with as well to get the word out as a partner of ours is creditcards.com. And their editorial team is going to be doing a bit of a feature on ours. So they were asking us for a lot of data points. They wanted to crunch numbers and all of that. And I went back and I was crunching the math. This was on Monday or something. I knew generally speaking where it was, but the impact's really big. So there are some people that you can think about how you probably all compartmentalize your credit card spend, and there are different segments in the industry, or I should rather say just the consumers. Some people just have one card and they put everything on and they kind of being organized and disciplined and all that. Other people, segment their cards, they put all their reoccurring expenses on one card to keep it organized, and then they put travel on this card and meals and entertainment on that. So there's no doubt that people are using our card in addition to other cards that are in their wallet, which is fine. It's just kind of our message. I'm again on the soapbox, but it's just add it to your wallet. It's not that it needs to replace, all of your other stuff.
What is the rate of return? So is it 1% back on
certain purchases or all purchases, or how does that
It-
work?
It's on all purchases. So there's obviously like no limit to that, but any purchase that you make is, like my term is cash back that gives back. So we actually had that on the back of the card. So
Can I see the card?
yeah, this is like a, I mean, yeah. Yeah. I was like, if we were gonna make mock cards, I mean, yeah, this is my real card, but those are promo cards that we made, and we put Abe Lincoln as the
Oh my gosh.
as the
Is it
person on.
1%?
Yeah, so it's 1% cash back. Now, part of natural question, right, is why isn't it more, or could it be more, or whatever. One, there are certain just structures of how, our bank partner has to build a credit card portfolio. So they were able to set aside essentially 1% in MasterCard as well at start of this. As we grow, like our user base and our scale and all that, we'll have more, as really a movement, more negotiating leverage to hopefully eventually drive back even more cash back. But also, part of just to share with you a little bit of insight about how the credit card industry works is that it's generally done on such scale. So you might see cards that have 2x points on a certain category or at a certain retailer or at a certain airline, but then it's like 1x everywhere else. They know, they're doing a sophisticated enough financial modeling of their overall portfolio to know that the average amount that they're going to only be giving back might average around 1% or something of that sort. So, and then they're also going to look at other things that are going to make them profit on that portfolio that's going to average it out. Make no mistake that a credit card company is a corporation first versus how we're a public benefit corporation. Their their legal obligation is to maximize shareholder value. So they are the house. They're like a casino. The house is always going to win. So when a credit card company, Capital One, Citi, Chase Bank, et cetera, is going to launch, a new credit card, they're going to do all the math out about spend, what percent cash back or the point structure is, and then they're going to factor in charge off, late payment fees, interest, all of that, to know that they're going to absolutely come out ahead. Happy to go into more of the details about that, but just the underlying structure of the economics. It actually can seem complicated. I think it's pretty basic, especially if you think of like the incentives of why someone's going to hire Samuel L. Jackson and hawk a credit card.
I guess I've always wondered like what the credit card companies are gaining by giving rewards, but it makes sense. Like they're definitely in it for some sort of profit, and then to get people to get their cards would make sense with some sort of incentive, right? And then I guess with late payments and other things, they'll make a profit off of more than what they'd be given in rewards. Is that kind of how that works?
Absolutely, yeah. And they want to find, and it's no different than what we're doing. Again, I keep saying this, I'm on my soapbox, I'm trying to base it in reality too. It's no different than what we're trying to do, which is we want to give someone a compelling value. In the same way that you could get, and the rest of the industry offers cash back cards or bonus points cards or airline miles cards or Amazon cards or Gap cards or Nordstrom's cards, whatever it is, there's a hook. There's a value proposition that they want to get the consumer in. Ours is just approaching it from a socially conscious or an altruistic side. But clearly I would want people to have the card, use it, feel great, and want to keep using it, Yeah.
I have two questions.
Sure.
My first question is, in a world where you're being bombarded with, so every commercial is a credit card commercial, it feels like, how do you build trust with people who maybe don't trust in the credit card system because of experiences like you've talked about? And then secondly, how do you feel, or do you feel like Austin is a unique place to start something like this? The Austin environment, has that played a role in the success of Charity Charge?
Sorry. So these are two really good questions and big questions, so bear with me here. I think the number one way that I'm trying to do that is just by continuing to tell the story and be as real and try to communicate directly to people about what it is we're trying to build here, whether it's through forums like this or putting a video of this up on YouTube so people can actually come in and realize, wow, like, I saw what Wells Fargo did and how they took advantage and continue to take advantage of people, but then there's someone actually trying to do something positive. So PR and press has actually been really good to us because it's fortunately a great real story. But part of and we were having this chat before, and it's like why I love your question, part of also just the journey of like us trying to figure this out and how do we speak at scale. One has been working to grow awareness with great partners like creditcards.com, other people like that already have kind of the mind share of people going to their sites to try to find cards. We're listed up there, so that gives us good awareness and distribution to piggyback off of like the audience that they've already built. And then I think it's meeting people where we're at. I mean, a big learning point for me, especially this month, it's kind of really come full circle, is trying to just hear from people what their objections are to like wanting to get a new card or wanting to get our card, and making sure that we're properly addressing them. And although there's like a full range of reasons, there's in essence like a repeatable questions that come up. You had some great questions, Sam, before, but I had one this week. I was on the phone with a nonprofit, and I'll mention them because I think we're going to do some great stuff with them, and I think it's all public. But it was the San Antonio, the museum in San Antonio. It's San Antonio Children's Museum. I think it's the second largest in the country. Really cool stuff that they're doing. On the phone with their development director, going through all this stuff, and then kind of towards the end of the call, she was telling us how she loved it and everything, and I just said, great, like, so is there any reason why, you're not going to join this movement, why you're not going to get a card? And she said, well, my husband and I give back to multiple causes, and we really care about multiple things, and sometimes what that changes, and I just don't want to be tied to one cause. To which I'm kind of giving the entrepreneur's perspective. I'm like, okay, I'm hearing like what's blocking her, to which she just, and our website, or whatever we were doing didn't communicate it effectively. I was able to say, well, no worries, because our card actually allows you to pick multiple nonprofits and you can change it so you have the flexibility. To which she said, awesome, I'm getting it right now, and did it right on the phone, and then said, this is incredible, I'm so excited to get my card. So it was just kind of, feeling it out, and that's been I'm kind of taking this in a bunch of steps, but that's been a big lesson that I'm kind of learning, is like really trying to ask people for like getting to like the real core of like honest feedback so that we can do a better job of communicating that out to people. And if they're into it and it's a fit, then they get a card and it's great and they give back. And if it's not a fit, then at least they walk away knowing that we're trying to honestly, answer their question, not just shove something down their throat. With respect to Austin, individually, like as just a human being, and my personal just progression of like growth from coming down here at 23 to 31 now, Austin has been truly amazing for me. I think that people are super friendly. I was fortunate to get plugged into this group that was part of UT where I first worked, called the Austin Technology Incubator, and had some really awesome mentors there that really like inspired me to do something entrepreneurial, but also was like a great, essentially first job out of college. I think that whether it's Austin or it's any community, it's what you make of it, because part of it, prior to us launching this, when I was just like, I had the idea, but I didn't know how to do it or whatever. I mean, I bumbled around town, like going to like networking events or this like entrepreneurship workshop or whatever. And there came a point where you have to make things happen for yourself. And so I think that Austin tries to pull a lot of these resources, and that's great, and I'm not putting it down, but it's like all about personal responsibility. So you could make it anywhere if you take the initiative, but as an entrepreneur, no one's going to do it for you, and no one's going to care more about it than you do.
Can you kind of tell your experience of how you were able to get with MasterCard?
Yes.
What that was like?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's actually, I get asked that question a fair amount, and I don't know that I've ever given it the full attention that it deserves. I had when I originally had this idea, then one of the first things I did, and you all are kind of consultants in this room, I thought that because of my days at working at ATI, which a lot of it was about market research of we'd have a company that would apply to get in the incubator that had some sort of business idea, and we maybe didn't have specific domain expertise. Say it was like a solar company that was trying to get in. So we would reach out to consultants and experts in the area, and we would ask them questions and all of that. So I eventually realized that, well, what I'm trying to do at the end of the day isn't that different than the fact that all these brands have credit cards. So again, Nordstrom's, Amazon, Southwest, United Airlines. So I thought there must be a term for this. Googled around. Well, the industry is called co-brand credit card industry. Really was pioneered in the 80s and has been thriving ever since. And in that business model, a bank and a payment network, like in our case, Commerce Bank and MasterCard, partner with Charity Charge, or in the case of Southwest, Chase Bank and Visa partner with Southwest. The bank and the payment network want to get access and exposure and grow their brand and their book of business through the channel that that partner has of awareness, customer base, loyalty program, et cetera. So I started Googling around. I found a list, actually, I think it was on Visa's website, of 20 co-brand credit card consultants. And I started reaching out to them. And I knew nothing about the industry. So the first 17 either never returned my call or hung up, within 30 seconds hung up on me, or, were saying, well, I have a minimum $50,000 retainer, because they're representing Southwest Airlines, they have huge fees, and it's no knock, but think about what Deloitte has a minimum. You're not just helping the mom and pop technique, you've got a staff and nice desks and iced tea and cookies and all that. So that's fine, that's their business model and that's their decision. But at any rate, finally, number 18, and that was when I remember doing it. It was one of my first senses of adversity in this Charity Charge entrepreneurial journey, where I realized no one else is going to keep making calls. If I've got 17 people here that don't even want to give me the first little nugget of information about how this industry works, but I got to call number 18 because no one else is going to pick up the phone for me. Fortunately, number 18 was a gentleman named Hunter Woolley, who was just the nicest guy, complete 180 from the first 17. And he answered all my questions, on that initial call, sent him a bunch of emails back and forth, talked to him a bunch of times, from there on out on the phone. About 6 months later, at the time, he was working for one of the larger credit card consulting firms in the country, right? So they would represent, theoretically, again, LL Bean or Amazon or Southwest, all these firms, they don't know anything, nor do they want to have necessarily expertise in the credit card industry, so they'll hire consultants to build their program and manage it and all that. So at any rate, about 6 months later, Hunter got hired to run the co-brand business development team at MasterCard. And so that was a huge way obviously there were other sides of it that I had to do for them to actually want to partner with us, but that was a huge step towards getting that partnership and had already built some level of trust and rapport with someone who ultimately now is a decision maker with the eventual partner. So just a great power of cold calling. I think when it's authentic, cold calling works, but it also has to be done in volume because the first 17 might not give a shit about you, but if number 18 does, that's all you need, So thank you, Hunter, if you're ever watching. Yeah. And if I can throw in, if we're recording, and Mike Zieg, he's a great guy at MasterCard too. So super helpful with this. Yeah.
Did you have to, I guess, kind of build your brand and vision, all of that stuff before you even went to MasterCard to talk about a partnership? Yes.
That was, to be candid, the most challenging thing about this. Because it's a complete 180 from how co-brand credit cards are traditionally launched. And you're also dealing with trying to change the way that multi-billion-dollar organizations structure partnerships and the way that they do business. And so here's the case in point, right? If we break down the credit card industry. Generally speaking, credit cards drive the loyalty program for the partner. So let's take Southwest Airlines, for example. They didn't start with a Southwest Airlines credit card. They started with an airline, and people really liked that airline, and the airline worked and was efficient and had good service. So they naturally said, what could we do to drive more loyalty? So then they created a rapid rewards or a frequent flyer program. So they've got the airline, they've got their actual business, and then they've got a loyalty program, a way for people to fly and get points. So then a natural extension to fuel the loyalty program is a credit card that everywhere you shop earns you miles that are part of your existing loyalty program that fuel people using more flights. That just becomes a big loop. Same thing, Amazon. Amazon started as their core business, then they had Prime and other things, and then they put on a credit card. Best Buy. Best Buy starts as a retailer, then they had their, I think it was Reward Zone or whatever their loyalty program is, then they add a credit card onto it. So it's usually, basically, always the credit card that is that last piece to fuel the loyalty program to actually drive the business and drive retention for those and all of that. With our card, we had to create this organically, right? Because I didn't have a book of, I mean, we were just, I want to have a card that gives back to charity. I mean, in essence, the nonprofit is just like is the airline. It's that and nonprofit, and then they've already got a loyalty or a donor base, and then we fuel that. And the way that I was eventually able to build up enough, I guess, goodness or get them to really take it seriously was about a couple of years ago, we were picked kind of randomly just because I had applied to a couple of social impact accelerator programs around Austin. So back to your question, yeah, so this was pretty helpful. But at any rate, IBM was putting together this competition, this like reality show, and they wanted to feature social entrepreneurs. And at that point, all honestly was an idea. I had went on plasticprinters.com and had fake, like just plastic credit cards that I was like, this is my idea, or this is what I'm doing, or whatever. And we had just a basic one-page website where it was like, we're launching soon, like get on the list, but it didn't have any agreements with, any of the banks or the MasterCard or whatever. Anyway, IBM selected me and the company, me as one of the top 10 social entrepreneurs in the country, IBM with South by and this group in town called Verb, and this woman Zoe who used to run, I think she might still run Unlimited USA locally in town, referred me in. So anyway, that goodwill led IBM to feature us, some press, a lot of like video content, and then I was able to go back, in part use that as leverage for MasterCard and our bank partner. So it wasn't just me saying, oh, I have this great idea, oh, I want to change the world. It was like, hey, IBM selected me, and then we narrowed it down to like a top 5 social entrepreneur. So it was just having that third-party credibility or validation that helped. Otherwise, traditionally speaking, a bank or a credit card company, to get them to launch a co-brand credit card, they would want to go, great, you're an established brand. You have millions of customers that you can market to. You have an existing loyalty program. We're willing to partner with you. Starbucks just announced this week they launched a new credit card. Starbucks has a great mobile app. They already have a reward system. Their distribution is unbelievable. Locations. Their customer loyalty is unbelievable. People love their product. You know what I mean? It's not hard, so Chase did it. So Chase paid, I'm sure, I could cuss there, but a ton of money for that book of business. I mean, that was a really coveted brand that someone wanted to do something with. Same with Southwest Airlines, anything like that. So yeah, it's a pretty interesting industry, and it's kind of cool to be able to see the inner workings. Now, this shift and a lot of the learnings are coming. I thought it was a lot to just learn what it took to launch and like what that partnership process and what they needed to see and all those contracts and the legal and all the, quite frankly, just BS that it goes into launching a card program. And now it's on like growing a portfolio and like the day-to-day management or customer service or like issues or stuff like that. So there's a whole like partnership building side, and then there's an acquisition side in the industry, and then there's obviously like a retention and usage and all that. So I mean, I'm sharing with you what I know through my point of view, but always a lot to learn, and will continue to be.
Most of your new card holders, is it word of mouth? Is it speaking at events like this? People just stumbling on your website?
So the majority have come, I mean, really in 3 buckets. One is through partnerships with organizations like creditcards.com, Red Ventures, organizations like that have basically are the place where people go to look and compare credit cards, and then people are scrolling through and they see ours and it resonates with them, so they get the card. The same way if you had like a product, a food product, you would want to go to Whole Foods or grocery stores because they've got the shelf space and they've got people walking through that are deciding which, iced tea to pick out. The other way is through partnerships with nonprofits. So we have like a really easy way that we give a nonprofit a custom fundraising page for free. We give them a marketing toolkit so that they can get out to their audience, that this is an easy way, and it's a place where people can sign up for the card and it's tagged to automatically support that nonprofit. And then, word of mouth, is great. And then trying to figure out better ways to speak to people at scale, like through, Connor's help, and this is Connor and everything. So those 3 buckets.
So how many people do you have in your team now? I'm on your website.
Yep.
It looks great, actually.
Oh,
You're
thanks,
talking about,
Grant.
how
Yeah.
you did all these things to initially launch and you
Correct.
started the incubator program, but I'm assuming you now had to you have other employees working for you. So can you share that? Who works for you now, or what do you outsource?
Yeah. So one of everyone that works for me, by and large, came on pretty organically, either like as an intern or like as a friend helping out. And then as trust built and more was needed of them and the company needed them more, it's grown.
Is Connor a friend?
Connor's a friend. Yeah, absolutely. So to specifically answer your question, my first employee, my first hire was Alexandra, who's on the site. Excuse me, and she started originally when she was at UT, a senior at UT, as an unpaid intern, and then moved into a paid intern, and then part-time, and then now full-time. Everyone else has more or less come on board kind of in a similar capacity as that. And I think, though, that something that I've found that's been really great, like just if you guys are thinking about your own ventures or eventually like have ideas you want to do on the side or whatever, the state of the world today, I think is really great to start a company for many reasons. But part of why it's really great is a bunch of people that help me out are in part-time roles or like they're freelance. Like they got their hands on a bunch of different projects, and it's cool and exciting for them to help out with us like 15 hours a week, but then they're also operating another side business or work somewhere else. And that's very much kind of this like shift, I think, in the remote worker and people that are shifting into more like freelancing and kind of have their hands in a bunch of different things to make up what would traditionally be, a full-time income. But yeah, definitely, we're building this on the backs of a lot of really great people like Connor and Grant and Abby and Alexandra and Martin and Nick and Cameron and Erica and, people that came even before. At the lowest point when I thought that we wouldn't be able to launch this company, one of the most like lowest kind of depressing points in my entrepreneurial journey, a friend of mine named Alex Kane reached out and offered to help and helped, at the time and for a while just for equity. Because that was all I could give him. There was no money to go around or anything like that, but he just believed in it. So just different people have been able to throw in, and now like it's just great that that people care, and want to help out. It's been really awesome.
You said you started this 18 months ago?
We launched it 18 months ago, like live to the market. I had the idea a number of years ago. So it took me a good, years in like kind of what I would call like R&D phase, so to speak, first it was just figuring out like what are the puzzle pieces, and then figuring out how to put those puzzle pieces together. And then separate from just like the partnership with MasterCard and Commerce Bank, it was pulling together the partnership with Network for Good and GuideStar, and then building the technology platform locally. Like we work with a shop here in town called Protea that are the best in the space in terms of building, payment systems and technology for nonprofits or, companies that are trying to do something in the payment industry. So they stepped up to the plate and helped us out and have been really, really good friends to us. And they happen to be here locally. So, maybe I should have thought deeper about your question about Austin. I mean, the two partners there, Thon and Richard, have been super helpful, big time. But it's just, a lot of time and work to get this initially, this type of venture set up.
It's really impressive. So to hear your story about how you scaled this, in such a short amount of time is really impressive.
Now that you have all these employees, what's your company culture like, and how do you, I guess, maintain that as the founder?
Well, we just moved into a new office space that I'm very excited about. It's not as nice as this, but I mean, this is a heck of a space. I'm jealous. Really trying to build that. I mean, I think that honestly, that's one of the biggest challenging things, is when you have a lot of people working remotely and you have, not everyone being full time. There's a lot of challenges and gaps in communication, and I'm just trying to get better as a leader of how to inspire and motivate everyone. I do know that at the core, everyone's helping out because there's something that they believe in, at the company, as opposed to like it just being a paycheck for them. But that's I think gonna really make or break success. I mean, all a company is the people that are a part of it, whether the actual like employees or the people doing the stuff internally, or people in our case like card holders or businesses that decide they want to have a corporate card and join this movement that we're building. So it's a huge challenge, but I really care about them, and I try to get it across. But also, when you're building something, there's so many, entrepreneurship can be such a manic thing where there's like high highs and low lows. So part of the challenge is, I may just, or I should be, by like general standards, be having a bad day because something like blew up or whatever. But then I'm coming here to like talk to you. So, I always want to be honest, and like I am in a great mood today, and life's swell and all. But it's like recognizing, I think about it. It's like if I had, I don't need children yet, but if I had a dog and like I came back and the dog like chewed everything in my house, and then like I'm going to meet a friend 30 minutes later, like I can't show up. Like it's not fair to show up pissed off. Like the friend didn't do anything wrong. So really trying to regulate your emotions and just recognize that the big picture of life's good.
Kind of,
Go for it.
What kind of like contract do you have with MasterCard? Does it limit you to like expand to other kinds of cards like Visa and Discover, or like, and then along with that, what are your like longer term goals after you kind of like keep developing this in the short term?
Mm-hmm. So the brief answer is it does, and now it's the same for any partner. So Southwest has exclusivity with Visa and Chase Bank. We have exclusivity for a period of time with MasterCard and Commerce Bank. But any partner would have that. If they're going to get in with it, if they're going to get in it with you, and they're like, hey, we're going to step up to the plate and put our resources and willing to launch this thing with you and put our employees' times and kind of build the infrastructure and systems, they obviously want to have an agreement in place like any general business structure. But what does happen, and they've been two great partners so far. A lot of respect, goes out to Commerce Bank. But just to give you some perspective of the model, you'll see all the time that a contract will go up for renewal. So I'm trying to think of an example. Whatever. I think Starbucks went with Visa. So the Starbucks Visa card. In 5 years, 7 years, that's going to come up for renewal. MasterCard's going to bid on it. Discover might bid on it. Amex might, and they'll switch. It's kind of whoever's offering more. Not necessarily more money, but more resources, or they think it's the better relationship.
It's kind of related to like how consulting works too, in terms of working on clients and projects. So.
Yeah. And then what we're trying to do beyond this. I mean, I think that one, we already have some businesses using it, but we'll be in the near future publicly announcing our launch of our corporate card and our business card. So companies can use it, and like employees can use it as well, and just give back, kind of on the dime or the expenses that the company's making. So really excited about that. And then I think bigger picture is trying to share more of the message of what I kind of started with, is just this let's remind ourselves that giving is better than receiving, and let's try to be a little bit more mindful of helping others.
Are you or Commerce Bank, have you guys collected enough data to say that your customers are potentially not defaulting on payments, or they're paying them more on time just because they're being mindful by already using this card? And I'm wondering if they're being mindful with their purchases. I mean, I know it's only been launched for 18 months, so there might not be enough data, but I wonder if that's the case.
I don't have a direct answer to your question, but it's a great question. I want to probe a little deeper and see what I can find out.
Something to potentially pitch to
Yeah.
your bank is that,
Yeah.
the customers that are going to be using this card are probably going to be more mindful in their purchases.
That was one of the core drivers of like what we thought would the economic implications,
Right.
On like the bank side
Right.
of launching this program. So yeah, I mean, and look, and generally speaking, we've skewed to people that have higher credit scores, that are a bit more affluent, that could be more mindful. There's a few things that I can't quite publicly share, but you're thinking about it the right way for
Yeah.
sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure it's like the hypothesis that you went into. Just be interesting to see if the data is actually backing that up now. But I'm not even sure like what's more profitable for the bank, right? Do they want you to be late on your
Yeah,
payment so
that's
that
what
you're
I'm
making more
wondering.
money, or do they want you to know that you're a trusted client that's going to pay? I don't know what the answer is.
Well, it depends on the. It would depend on the bank and what their level of like credit risk and like kind of.
What their
Yeah.
like the appetite for risk.
Yeah, because and naturally, if you're a bank, well, if you're anyone, generally speaking, especially a bank, you're all numbers and data and quantitatively driven. So you're going to be hedging like a risk reward, but obviously, more risk you put in, upside bigger. But then it would also come to, it would come to the general underlying kind of ethos, whatever, just direction of the bank. Of how they're trying to grow. Like, are they trying to aggressively grow but take on more risk, or are they trying to more like stably grow? So like Commerce, for example, was recently ranked by Moody's as the number 7 bank in the country for its like essentially credit worthiness. So they are going to steer a bit more conservatively, but if you look at their track record and you look at like their stock price, I mean, they've crushed it. I mean, I think that they completely avoided all the pitfalls of the recession because they didn't get involved at all in everything that was going on with mortgage and that all the other banks got like crushed in.
Right.
But they took a more conservative approach. So for those years, like those other banks preceding it looked like they were killing it, but then they were obviously exposing themselves to more risk. So one would be the risk appetite of the bank, to answer your question. Number 2 would just be the structure of the rewards program. So depending on what type of rewards you're offering to a consumer with the credit card, you would be more mindful of charge-offs and things of that sort. With our card, for example, because it's at that 1%, they basically know that they'll be able to be profitable because they're not extending it more like 2% in these categories, but only 1% here. So there's a lot of banks across the country, and a lot of them have just different strategies and objectives for how they want to grow.